Hello students, welcome back to another class of BNS. So today we are going to look at section 1 of BNS. Now section 1 of any legislation for that matter becomes very much important for us because it talks about name of the legislation and it also talks about scope of the legislation. For most of the legislations, it is section 1 which talks about scope of the legislation. Now, when you look at other legislations, right, for the ones which are applicable in entire India, it will simply say it is applicable throughout India to the whole of India. For any legislation that is applicable to any state, it will say that, okay, this legislation is applicable to this certain state. But then there are certain legislations like BNS, wherein the scope is a bit complicated, and that is the reason you often get questions on that also. So it's very important that you understand what is the scope of BNS, where is it applicable. So this is what is the section 1. It is chapter, within chapter 1 it is given. So section 1 is with regard to short title, commencement as well as application of this legislation. So this act is called as BNS or Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Year is 2024-23 because that's when it received President's assent in December 2023, 25th of December. But then it became applicable or enforceable in 2024. So it shall come into force on such dates as the central government may by notification in the official gazette appoint, and different dates may be appointed for different provisions of this Sahita. Every person shall be liable to be punished under the Sahita and not otherwise for every act or omission contrary to the provisions thereof. So if somebody is doing something which is going against the provisions of this act, the person can be punished for it, of which he shall be guilty within India. So all these provisions are there, and then it also gives an explanation also, then there is an illustration also. When you look at BNS, right, it often gives explanations and illustrations to make things more clear, because just stating the section, just stating the elements might not be enough. So to make things more clear, it always specifies it provides certain illustrations or examples as well. So when you look at the section 1, right, so what it mainly talks about is that it establishes the short title. What is the name of this legislation? It also talks about its commencement, when it will start being applicable to us, that a date will be appointed, and as per that it will be applicable. And when this act became applicable, it became applicable from 1st of July 2024. You can remember this date, it's very important because it's a new legislation, right? So 25th of December 2023. So 25th of December 2023, it received President's assent. 1st of July 2024, it became enforceable. It clarifies that BNS applies to offences within India as well as those which are committed outside India. Okay, not just Indians committing something within India, but this act would also apply to those offences which are committed outside India but by Indian citizens. So if two Indian citizens commit an offense outside India, if they were in India, they would have been made liable. Case would have been filed. So same can be filed on them also. Just because they committed it outside India, they cannot escape the liability. Or on Indian registered ships and aircraft. If any person, whether Indians or foreigners, commit an offense in an Indian registered ships or aircraft, those also will be held responsible under provisions of BNS. It also clarifies that BNS does not affect the provisions of any special or local laws. If there are some local laws that are applicable to people from a certain tribe or a certain community, those laws will be untouched. Those laws, it's like a saving provision that those laws will remain as it is. Similarly, if there are any special laws applicable to any, like Army, Navy, etc., those also, like soldiers and all, those also will not be applicable. Those whatever laws are applicable to them, those only will be applicable. BNS provisions will not change those. So BNS is a complex piece of legislation, but at the same time, it is very important for us to know it because a lot of times we see cases are being filed under this particular legislation. And before you start with the legislation, it's also very important that you know the scope of this legislation, on whom is it applicable, in what all situations is it applicable. So if I have to give you 2-3 examples on the scope of this legislation, take for example, there is an Indian citizen. Okay, an Indian citizen commits a cyber crime with the so take for example, there is an Indian citizen, okay? An Indian citizen commits a cyber crime while in another country, targeting a computer resource which is located in India. What do you think? Will BNS be applicable to them or not? You can write your answers in the comment section below. So, an Indian citizen, while he is in a foreign country, commits a cybercrime targeting a computer resource which is located in India. Will that person be held responsible, or can a case be filed under BNS? So, yes, they can be prosecuted under BNS because they are an Indian citizen and they were targeting a computer resource which was located in India. Even though at the time of commission of crime, they were in a foreign country, we can file a case against them under BNS. Another example I can give, a foreign national, okay, a foreign national who is not a citizen of India, foreign national commits theft while on an Indian registered aircraft, which is flying over international waters. Okay, so person is who is the offender, a foreign national, but he commits a crime of theft on an Indian registered aircraft. So BNS clearly mentioned that any offense which is committed in an Indian registered aircraft will also be BNS applies to them, right? So in this case also BNS will apply if a foreign national commits theft on an India registered aircraft which is flying over international water. Even though it was flying over international water, that would not affect it because at the end the aircraft was Indian registered. So BNS will apply it. That case also, and those persons can be prosecuted under the provisions of BNS in India. Another example would be a military officer. Okay, a military officer commits mutiny while on duty outside India. So he was not in India, he was on duty outside India and he commits the offense of mutiny. So they can also be prosecuted under relevant military laws if they are there. If those laws are not in existence, they can be prosecuted under BNS provision because BNS clearly says that if there are some specific laws applicable to military and other those officers, they will be prosecuted under those provisions. And if nothing is there, then BNS applies. So basically, BNS also talks about a saving provision that if for military, army, navy, etc., some specific laws are there, those will be applicable, like a saving provision. Those laws will remain as it is. Same for if there are some local laws or something applicable to a specific group of community or a tribe, those would be applicable to them. Okay, so this is in simple words what is section 1 of BNS. Okay, it talks about the name of the legislation, it talks about the enforcement date that it will be notified at a later stage and which was notified as 1st of July and now it is applicable also. Then it talks about the territorial scope of the legislation, which is very important for us to know. So I hope this section 1 of BNS is clear to you. In case you have any doubts, you can always reach out to me on my WhatsApp number given in the description box below. And if you want a video on any specific section of BNS or any other legislation, you can always let me know. So that's all for today's class. Bye for now. All the best for your exams.